much guess where the beginning of this battle will go. Yes, it is a battle of material choices. The Samsung Galaxy S4 actually sits in what can be considered a bygone era. It was back in a time when glossy plastic was pretty much what we expected from Samsung no matter what device they put out. However, the material does make the phone very fingerprint prone, and it could slip about pretty easily in your hand. As the S4 did come out within the craze of the 5-inch screen, it is nice to see that it was one of the easiest to handle, especially at the time of its release. Fast forward some time and we get the Nexus 5. Sporting a 4.95-inch screen, this phone is just about as big as the footprint of the S4. However, it is actually just as light, despite having a different material choice. In the black version of the Nexus 5, it employs soft touch plastic, which gives it a very nice feel and a little bit more grip when you use it in your hand. The Nexus 5 takes some cues from the Nexus 7 tablet of 2013, making some pretty minimalistic design choices on its back. Once you get the phones in your hand, you find that the handling is pretty much the same either way. As far as looks go, it is a very subjective matter. However, I will say this, I don't find that many people who argue for glossy plastic these days anymore. The Samsung Galaxy S4 comes with a 5-inch screen at 1080p resolution and 441 pixels per inch. Now, being a Super AMOLED display, it is pretty much expected that the colors will be pretty highly saturated. But the good thing about the Galaxy S4 is that you can customize the color motif, so you can tone that down if you really need to. It was one of the best 5-inch screens available in the beginning, and until now it is still one of the better performing. However, LG is no stranger when it comes to good display quality, especially after the great display found in the LG G2. This 4.95-inch screen is also capable of 1080p resolution and comes in at 445 pixels per inch. Now, it is an IPS screen, which means it does get pretty typically high brightness. The Nexus 5 screen, however, we will say, is a little bit less in terms of its performance when compared to the LG G2, which is the phone supposedly it is based off of. It is still really great and definitely holds up against the Galaxy S4. Pretty much you can have your pick here, as either display will give you great performance. Especially if you enjoy the higher saturation of Super AMOLED, then that's great. The Nexus 5 on the other hand will give you reliable performance no matter what you throw on that screen. The Samsung Galaxy S4 is the older device, so as is pretty typical, it does lose the edge in the performance aspect. However, the S4 comes with the Snapdragon 600, which at the time of its release was one of the fastest processors available. It is clocked in at 1.9 GHz and is backed by the Adreno 320. Now, this is not a bad performance package by any means and is still actually one of the most reliable you can get on a smartphone today. I still found very minimal lag in the TouchWiz of the Samsung Galaxy S4, and to be fair, even if that lag was there, it didn't hinder from my overall experience. Nonetheless, the Samsung Galaxy S4, even all the way to today, is still a pretty reliable phone and provides a good experience. Of course, with the newer Nexus 5, we get the updated Snapdragon 800, clocked in at 2.3 GHz and backed by the Adreno 330. Now, this is the fastest processing package available on a smartphone today, and it definitely powers the minimalistic Android 4.4 KitKat beautifully. Yes, Android KitKat will blaze through all of its elements, and there's no doubt that the Nexus 5 is one of the fastest and smoothest experiences available on a smartphone currently. While empirically the Nexus 5 will be faster because of its higher processing power, I will say that the Samsung Galaxy S4 still remains a very reliable competitor. And with that in mind, despite the Nexus 5's Android 4.4 KitKat providing a very seamless Android experience, that doesn't mean that you won't be able to get the same tasks done in a good time with the S4. It is in the hardware department that we might start to see some disparity. The Nexus line is not necessarily known for having a lot of bells and whistles in its smartphones and its tablets, and the Nexus 5 is pretty much no different. The 16 or 32 gigabytes of onboard storage is not expandable, for example, and after that we have the usual bevy of connections. However, what the Nexus 5 does boast, at least compared to its predecessor, is full LTE support. Also, there is Qi wireless charging available on the Nexus 5 out of the box, which is a really nice feature to have. However, when it comes to the battery, it is a 2300 mAh unit that was supposed to power a minimalistic Android 4.4 KitKat. Unfortunately, the battery life is probably the weakest point when it comes to the Nexus 5. Anything more than average usage will get you results that you probably won't be very happy with. Compare that to the Galaxy S4, which does come with a larger 2600 mAh unit, but has one very important trait, the fact that it is removable. Yes, you can have spare batteries so that power is never far away when you need it. However, when you go deeper into the Galaxy S4, we find even more that it is capable of. That's because a myriad of sensors provides the Galaxy S4 with a bunch of extra functions aside from the general smartphone experience. That includes air views, air gestures, smart scroll, even an IR blaster for controlling your TV. It's just a matter of whether or not those extras are for you. If you don't need all of that other stuff, perhaps the Nexus 5 is a much better value because it gets back to the essentials, and it does them all very well. And in the camera department, we'll probably see even more disparity. Pretty simply put, the Nexus line has quite a ways to go when it comes to its camera optics. This 8-megapixel shooter does come with optical image stabilization, which allows it to flood even more light in for low light shots. However, when it comes to most other shots, we see that the color production does leave quite a bit to be desired. This can be remedied by having HDR+ on, and a lot of users might just end up having HDR+ on all the time to compensate for this. Its pictures are just vastly better. When it comes to OIS, however, it does provide a very good performing low light shooter. It will allow you to get a shot even in pretty dark conditions. However, the picture that comes out the other side may still lack some of the quality like we were saying before. It's no secret that Samsung threw in so many new options in their camera for the S4 that you pretty much have nothing but choices when it comes to your smartphone photography. It is in the picture quality that the S4 truly does excel, as it does provide very good color production in plenty of its pictures. Without the OIS, however, its low light performance does leave a little bit to be desired, so that's where the Nexus 5 can definitely have a point in its column. It's pretty hard not to give the S4 the edge here, but it does make us think, what would a camera with the S4 performance look like with optical image stabilization? Perhaps no word was used more for the Samsung Galaxy S4 UI than practicality. Yes, practicality is the question when it comes to this version of TouchWiz, which provides a lot of new navigation features. In its general UI, however, it is pretty much agreed that TouchWiz is in need of a pretty big refresh. Not only has the pretty bloated UI been used in a bunch of different devices, it could use a pretty different look at this point. However, Samsung focused on functionality when it came to its newer versions of its operating system, and in that regard it does somewhat succeed. However, is it all useful? That's the question that we still sort of ask even to today. When it comes to the Nexus, Google frequently goes back to its roots, and that's search, when it comes to its newest iterations of Android. And for Google Now, it took center stage when it came to Android 4.4 KitKat. The highly contextual and also very good performing Google Now has been given much more integration in the newest version of Android 4.4 KitKat, and in this case, it means it is a second home screen found now all the way on the left. And with all of the other optimizations put into Android 4.4 KitKat, the performance and experience of Android has been taken to 11. All in all, the Samsung Galaxy S4 packs a lot more features on top of an already pretty good smartphone experience. However, when it comes to those features, it may not be a master of any one of those things. Meanwhile, the stock Android experience continues to get better, and Google focuses on particular and specific skill sets when it comes to its Nexus smartphone line. And in that regard, it arguably does so at great success. The Samsung Galaxy S4, after some time, has a price that has come down to around $500 or more, which is actually not a bad price considering all that it is capable of, and that it is still